Welcome back to FlatsClass University. Today, we're going to solve a question for one of my loyal viewers. And that is, I'm struggling to find fish consistently. Can you help me? Well, there is a cheat code, and I'm going to share it with not only John B., but I'm going to share it with all of you right now. Come on, let's jump in. There are a lot of reasons why anglers cannot find fish consistently inshore. It could be you're new to the game. You're just overwhelmed by how vast the area you're trying to fish is. It's like, well, that shoreline looks good. That point looks good. That shoreline looks good. Oh, there's a boat down there. You just don't really have a plan. And you fall into these complacent routines where you do the same thing because it's comfortable. But what it really is it's lazy. It's just plain lazy. You're not paying attention to nature's signals, which will point the direction of where the actual fish are. Instead, you're relying on technology. You're relying on these apps. You're relying on these social media influencers to point you in the right direction, or you're looking at their videos trying to figure out what dock that is in the background, what house that is. Is that a boat? Is he at this ramp? You're asking all these questions, and none of those things are actually going to put you on the path to success. Let me put this aerial overlay up here and explain something to you. Here we go. This is a satellite overlay of an area in Southwest Florida. You'll notice I've got a lot of notations of prime targets. And you'll see that I've got oyster bars, I've got a creek, I've got a grass flat, hard edges, deep points, junctions, channels, guts, troughs, docks. And all of these are prime targets. But here's what I'm asking you. When are they prime targets? And why? So if you're looking at a chart, you've done your homework and you're staring at this thing and you've taken pictures of it, or you got an app, and you're looking down here and you're seeing all these spots. What do they mean? Well, in many cases, they mean absolutely nothing. They mean nothing. I could circle every point, every deep spot, every oyster bar, every junction. I could circle it all and tell you that these are likely prime targets. And that might have some half truth to it. But why and when? That's where you have to really dive or drill down and ask yourself, who's the most consistent people on the water every day? Professional guides. They don't rely on charts and satellite maps. Instead, they rely on their outdoor skills, their experience to govern their decision making. This flow of information that they receive is what they see from previous experiences that they've had on the water. So that's what makes them consistent. That's what actually builds their reputations. Now, how many times have you heard this? Damn, that guy always catches them. Always. Well, that's because he's cluing into a few things that you haven't thought of, and that's nature signals. And I'm going to share the formula with you right now. You have to recognize, you have to adapt, and then you have to apply your skills. You have to think about this. This is the cheat code, which AKA is the talent code at FlatsClass University. Now I'm going to break these down one by one, but first I want to talk about what are the three major factors that influence game fish. Hunger, naturally. That's what we rely on to fool them. Temperature regulation. They're cold-blooded, so wherever they feel comfortable, the most comfortable, that's where they're going to be. And then lastly, reproduction. Now there is a fourth factor, and it's a big name. And I'm going to save that for the end of the video. Because fish, unless it's extreme conditions, are for the most part scattered throughout the estuary. East, west, north, south. They just are. Fish are fish. They have fins and tails and they move around a lot. And there are a lot of things that influence where they are. And basically their species type determines where they are as well. But let's just talk about food sources. Food sources are the main driver when we talk about those factors that influence game fish. You know, is there a bait run going on? That could be a mullet run, that could be a hatch of glass minnows, a crab flush, shrimp, whatever. There's always something like that going on somewhere and the fish tune into it. But they also tune into certain areas and shorelines based off where the bait is comfortable. The bait is looking for, zooplankton, and is the salinity right for them? Is the water clarity right for them? And is the temperature for those bait fish the ideal temperature range for them? Lots of times that determines what shoreline they're on. Are they on that one? Or are they on that one? I don't know. You gotta learn that. Tidal movement, or the hydrology of the zone. Lots of times the hydrology of the area that you're trying to fish will determine if the fish are going to set up there, especially if they're more ambush predators like speckled trout, like flounder, or snook if you're a Floridian or a South Texan. These fish will set up in the zones where the current kind of just pushes bait through, around something, through a cut, around a point. They're going to be somewhere in that zone taking advantage of that current. Now there's also wind and wave action, especially during the warmer months, where those will open up a lot of opportunities as well for hungry game fish. So in the warmer times of the year, you may fish the shorelines that are more exposed to wind and wave action. And then lastly, structure or cover. There are certain types of structure and cover that really work out for fish. Let's just say it is a colder period. At that time, oyster bars become quite the magnet, not only because they have the grocery store that's attached to them, but also for warmth. A lot of that harder substrate really warms up in the wintertime, and it will hold an awful lot of creatures and draw game fish closer to it. So you've got to factor all that stuff in the hunger game. See what I did there? Hunger game. All right, next, let's talk more about that temperature influence, because that could gang fish up. Game fish have a ideal temperature range for each species, and they're going to seek that out. Now, it is much more imperative that they find that perfect range during the winter months and during the summer months. In the winter months, they don't want to freeze to death, so they'll generally find a warmer zone that is tucked up somewhere where there's some heat or deeper insulating depth. In the summertime, some of the shallows, especially in areas that don't see a lot of tidal flow, will get low in dissolved oxygen. So the fish will move off to what we call like temperature thermoclines, where they can get below and get into cooler water that generally holds more oxygen. So in times like that, those extreme times of the year, you will find concentrations of fish where they may not be as scattered as they typically are. Remember, they're scattered probably 75% of the time, but 25% of the time or 30% of the time, they are looking for opportunities to regulate temperature, or it might be a spawning situation. There will be something, and well, let's cover spawning next. Spawning is one of those windows of time where fish may migrate from one point to another. And if you know their habits, okay, you'll know that snook like to move into passes and inlets that time of year when they're doing their spawn. Tarpon typically will bunch up at passes and inlets and then move offshore. Redfish, a little bit different, but they get in big schools as they get ready to spawn. And then trout, well, they have a long spawning period, but we all know the best time to target trout is late February through April, when the big girls are shallow and accessible to many of us that love the inshore game. There is a fourth factor, and it's a polarizing point, so I'm going to save that for the end, because I think it's going to be something that you're very interested in, and when I tell you about it, it may even initiate a response. If that's not a tease, I don't know what is. All right, let's talk about the equation again. Recognition, adaption, and then applying the skills, the application, okay, your ability. That's what equals finding fish consistently. That is the cheat code. Recognition, what are you looking for? You're looking for birds, best fishermen on the planet. That means you're looking for shorebirds, you're looking for brown pelicans, you're looking for terns. Sometimes gulls, sometimes, just sometimes, because they laugh at you a lot because they're fooling you. You're also looking for bait shows, mullet activity. You're looking for glass minnow schools that are on the surface, or pilchard schools on the surface. You're looking for shrimp popping along the marsh edges. You may see a lot of crabs. You know, you see them scattering on the bottom, or you see them on the surface, kind of just easing down in places like that. But you've got to see the food source. You've got to. So you've got birds and you've got a food source. Then you need current. You need hydrology. You need to see the current too. You need to know that that grass is laid over, or you can see the surface creating a rip or an eddy. That's all going to be important. And then lastly, when combined with 2 out of the first 3 would be structure and cover. I mean, it'd be rocks, an oyster bar, grass, mangrove, tree down in the water, dock, could be any of that stuff. Hole, roll off in the channel, anything like that. But they don't mean anything unless you have the first 3, or at least 2 out of the first 3 for sure. All right, then you are going to do what I call finding the pattern within the pattern. And that might be actually seeing like dust-offs where fish are pushing away, wakes, spraying bait where you can tell something's feeding. Maybe you see a complementary game fish, like if you're looking for redfish, maybe you see sheep's head. Maybe you see rays, bigger rays, not those little dirty little red brown ones. I'm talking about bigger rays, like southern stingrays. Maybe you see black drum. Maybe you even see a bonnethead shark. All of those particular type predators on a shallow flat or in a creek system, a marsh system, well, they have the same menu items when they tie that napkin around their neck that the redfish do. They want to eat the same things, crabs and shrimp and small bait fish. So process all of this stuff, because this is all in the first step of the formula. After talking about the recognition and then adapting, because you're seeing these signals in the water, these complementary species to the species that you're targeting. Now you are in the zone now. There's only one more thing to do, and that's to seal the deal. This is the application of your skills. The first thing that I like to do when I'm in a zone like that, and I'm typically on the back of the boat, push-pulling away, looking, is I'm reading the mood or the feel of the bait fish, you know. And because I did see some of the signs of the actual fish in the water, you know, those complementary fish, or maybe I saw the actual redfish. I'm reading their mood, you know. Is it cooler water temps and everyone's kind of calmed down? No one's really like hopping and chucking and moving around, juking and jiving and flashing and all that stuff? Well, that retrieve that you've become so accustomed to, that's part of your routine, that cast out, reel it back, cast out, reel it back, cast out, reel it back. That might not work. There's 3 parts to understanding what fish want to eat that you gotta figure out. Most of us just like to chuck and wind, but I'm telling you now, that faster pace retrieve does work at times and you get a reaction bite. But it only works when you notice that everything is busy. It's a busy zone that you're fishing. When you're fishing a zone and you're seeing signs, but it just doesn't look like it's really happening, then lure speed number 1 is going to matter. That paced, making contact with the bottom, working it at a methodical pace is going to matter. And then the size of the lure that you choose. There will be a size that they really tune into. Those are the 2 things that fish want the most: the right speed and the right size. That's what they want. The color. I'm not going to say it does not matter, but it matters a lot less than the first 2 considerations. It matters more in conditions like dirty water, low light conditions. That's when it really matters. It does not matter when conditions are fairly perfect, like lure speed and lure size. You just got to adapt to it. Put that stuff into your deal. That's the talent code. So when you put recognition, again, you adapt because now you know exactly what pieces you need for this to be a good spot. And then you use these skills by thinking about the pace of the lure, the size of the lure, and then you just use whatever color gives you the most confidence, because that's going to be the big deal there. When you have all those things 3 together, it's really not a cheat code anymore, is it? It's kind of a talent code. So that aerial map that you see with all these spots on it, there's probably only a few spots that actually matter, and they're going to have all those nature signals attached to them. So when I leave the ramp with a client or a family member, or just me, which that's most of the time now, I'll run a zone and I'm looking for likely spots. But I don't really stop to really pay attention until I see those signals, those signatures of nature that tell me this is where I should be fishing. Now let's talk about that 4th factor of influence that's a little controversial. Let's get to that one. That word is anthropogenic. Big word, huh? Well, it simply means impacted or affected by human activity. That's right. The 4th influence on game fish is fishing pressure. Fishing pressure. And if you fish in the Tampa Bay area, Jacksonville, Miami, I'd even say Charlotte Harbor, or if you fish in Galveston, or any of those points south of Galveston that are very popular fishing destinations, maybe Corpus Christi, or if you fish in Wilmington, Charleston, you know what I'm talking about. It's fishing pressure. That anthropogenic effect actually changes the behavior of the fish. It makes the fish populations more frightened, more wary, harder to catch. And it changes the way they move around. In fact, they won't be in places that they normally would be in. Now they're looking to get into zones that are less accessible to humans. I learned this through Captain Tommy Locke because I was fishing with him down in Charlotte Harbor. And the fish that used to stay up tight to the keys, up underneath the mangrove limbs, well, they weren't there anymore. Because so many boats burn those edges looking for them to see if they can find them, those fish simply don't go there until it gets dark. They stay out in 5 and 6 feet of water in deeper potholes where they're less visible. It's changed them. And then you have the factor that these smaller fish are coming in and into these areas where the larger fish used to be. There's like a redistribution of where they're at. And with a little bit of overfishing in some places, which I see quite often in Louisiana, it literally will change the population dynamic greatly, or significantly, I should say. It's not the same anymore. So that's the fourth influence. I know I kind of stirred the pot there a little bit, but it is what it is. If you enjoyed what you're watching here at FlatsClass University here on the channel, please thumbs up and smash that subscription button. I want to have you here every day in my virtual classroom. And if you think that we go in depth here, we really drill down at FlatsClass University, where we can make you a better angler.